Heyo there, it's Sven, and in today's video I'm going to be using that clay I gathered to make an ocarina. So, see how that goes. Alright, so, little disclaimer, this is not the first time I've made ocarinas from my native clay. My very first one is right here. It's very crappy. I didn't refine the clay at all. I just picked it up, gathered it, picked out by hand the leaves, and then fired it randomly. Sounds like garbage. Yeah, and it blew up every now and again. I made that when I was in high school. But I made this video before using this or making this one, but I decided not to post it because this ocarina, while it looks pretty alright and it works alright, it has its problems. Mainly the top notes don't work and the sound is kind of weak. It kind of works. I didn't get to fire it yet. But I want to do better because since I made that ocarina video and started editing it, I've been messing around more, and I made this one still out of native clay. Same stuff I gathered in the previous video. Has its minor issues, but it actually kind of works. And then I started screwing around with non-native clays. This is my best ocarina I've made yet. And I can play songs like after I made these ones, I figured I wasn't really happy with this ocarina build, and I need to make another one and show you how it's done, the new way that I do it. This was made in a two-part method where you where you basically form the shape of the ocarina and then you cut it in half and then you hollow it out, put those two pieces together, and you have your body. The other method you can use is you pinch both sides into shape and then put them together. That's how I originally started making ocarinas. This new method I use is a four-part build where each side is two different pieces. The back is a different piece attached and the mouthpiece is attached. You can do this in just three pieces where this cone is one, but I don't do it that way. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, I hope you'll excuse my messy workshop. It's going to be a little funky working around my camera. But here is a ball of the clay that I refined in the video that you may or may not have seen. If not, and you want to see me refine native clay from Lake Michigan, well, go check it out. But yeah, this is my clay. As you can see, it is malleable and functional. I like to start with a ball of clay about this big. A good handful. Seems like it'd be good for throwing. Yeah, and I guess let's begin. First thing I do is set it down and I just roll it in a sort of circular pattern like this, like semicircle pattern, to try and make it into a cone, as you'll see. I'm using the bottom of a gold pan right now. Use my hand up and down it, work from the tip. I don't want the tip too pointy. Right now the tip is kind of cracking. That's expected. And I got a big seam here. So the way I'm going to deal with that is by adding water. Got my water right here. put this on, get this seam gone, add some water to the tip. Cracking on the tip like that's pretty common, so I just like to add some good amount of water in there. It's a good friction. Push it in. That should be good to go. And then just move in a semicircular pattern here. Don't put too much pressure on the tip or it'll be unjustly sized. Like this. All right, I can work with this. From here, I'm going to take my cutting string right here and go say go here. Yeah, that'll do. Cut that off. It'll do. And this lump of clay we're going to use in a bit. That's about good. So we can continue rolling it like this, but when you have the option, I like to use a potter's wheel. Just makes things more round. It doesn't really matter how round it is because it's going to get messed up later. It's inevitable. Just the method I use will screw it up later, but it's still just kind of nice. So let me get that set up quick. All right, this is certainly going to be a bit new. Let me try. I have this little kitty potter's wheel. Nothing great, nothing special, but it'll do. I'm just going to attach my clay here. Push it pretty firmly in so I have a good grip on the plate. Put that on, spin. That'll do. Put my fingers, wet the piece. All right. Now, we'll bring this up to a cone, like this. Doesn't have to be perfectly conical. That'll do. Now, I find my metal scraper, wherever it is. Or I guess I don't find my metal scraper because I never put it back. Oh, no I did. I just clean off the slit. That's good enough for now. It doesn't need to be perfect. Nobody said it was going to be perfect. Now I'm just going to go and make sure it's cut off the bottom. That'll do. Pretty conical. Conical enough. We really didn't need to throw this one. This piece doesn't really matter that much. It's this next piece that really matters. You also don't need to throw this one. It doesn't really make much of a difference. You can do it by hand, but I just find I get the shape I like better this way. So I'm going to stick this onto the piece here. In this case, I'm just going to dunk it in water a bit. Get some slip in there. All right. My hand's really wet. Get some good slip in there. It's not the fastest wheel. but it does work. Push down. I'm just going to push downward. Create. I don't want this on there, it's too much. It's a little hard when it's off balance like this, but I make it work. Some power down, straight in the center if I can. Bring this down to flatten it out. That's better. And now I'm just going to push this edge down, round it a bit. And move up to a little point like this. Like that. That'll do. Pretty good shape. That doesn't really matter if it gets thrown around like that, but this will be basically the back of the ocarina right now, the other end. So you can see these two pieces and they'll go together like this. They still need some adjustment on their own, but that's how it's done. All right, so we got our back piece, put it over there. And we got our front piece right here. Making sure I get all the hairs that I have, because I have a lot of hair, out of the way, because they will be a problem later if you leave them. This piece needs to be rolled just a little more on the back. Clean up that end. It's okay if this doesn't look great right now. It's not going to look great. That's just in the nature of the game. You can see how these pieces go together like that. They sort of make that body shape. But I did say that this wasn't a 2-piece, this was a 4-piece. Obviously the mouthpiece being one of the pieces. So right now, I cut this cone in half. This is just my method. Works for me. You can see I didn't really try to avoid getting air bubbles because it doesn't really matter in my process. But cut those two pieces in half, and ideally I'm going to let these dry a little bit. I'm probably not going to do that right now because I have limited time. So what I'll do is I'll hold the piece like this, support it as best I can. I feel hair, get rid of that, whatever I can. And then I'll just cut in here and hollow out both sides as such. If it's a little drier, it cuts better without pulling so much. This doesn't get as floppy. But I'm on a time crunch, so going to be doing it like this. I also have a bloody nose right now, which is always fun. I literally have had a bloody nose this entire day nonstop. Never fun. So yeah, just hollow it out. Make sure to remember, take off a little bit here and a lot on the back because it tapers, you know. This is why having it perfectly conical wasn't that big of a deal. You are literally flattening this entire thing out right now in your hand. Like, I can make it flat like this, flat as a pancake. Grab some water and smooth the inside out. So it's good and smooth. And you can also do this to make sure it's evenly thin, which is also beneficial. Make sure these edges are good and straight. And if you want, you can take a knife like this and cut off the excess or leave the excess for a better base. You can see like that. I'm just going to smooth it out so it's all more or less one consistent thickness across the whole thing. Take all these cuttings. These cuttings are usually what I use to make the mouthpiece. So yeah, there's my triangle. Pretty good. And then I'm just going to curve it like this, all the way down, even to the tip. And place it down like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't need to be exact. And then back at this one. I'm going to spare you this side since it's the exact same thing. Alright, these two sides are done. Now to work on this one. There's a hair right in there. I wonder if I can get rid of that easily without it destroying my piece. I think I got it. Anyway, this is looking fine and dandy, but it won't for long because I need to support it and cut out the middle. For here, I like to just kind of do a circle. Try and support it as best I can, and then right at the end, cut the center out. And then add it to the ball, like this. Try not to go too thin on the walls, like I just did there. It's really easy to on accident, but if you do, you can always go in with your thumbs and push a little material over there. It always helps. Just get them wet first. Grab some with the thumb, squeeze it up. Help it out a little bit. Try and preserve this nub if you want that original look. Squeeze this over. It's a little thin on the wall there where I cut too deeply, so I'm just sort of fixing that. Squeezing some clay over, mixing it in, getting it a little thicker. And then cutting out some more. You can also just cut out a little bit with a smaller piece and then rely on pinching this part out. That's another option. That's a fair option. It's a little safer. Or you can wait for it to dry a bit more before you start cutting out your clay so it's not as, what's the word, tacky. Holds its shape better. But as I said, I have limited time, so I really can't wait for that right now. I've never been a fan of the blow drying method, especially with native clays. Blow drying method is where you use a blow dryer to dry the clay more quickly. You can do that, it works. I just like to let my clays dry very slowly whenever possible so it doesn't crack. But right now, just go in circles, cutting out material. Make sure I'm going deep towards the nub. Always feeling with my fingers how much space I have. Seems a little good, maybe a little thick on this side. So I'll just go in, scoop a little bit out. Little at a time. Feel it. Still thick, but the back is always thick. Let's go with my fingers, dip in. Maybe dip this side too. Preserve this nub. Preserve my shape. And then smooth the inside out. Pretty good. Like that. Now I'll just stick it down and kind of rebuild this shape a little bit because I messed it up. This is why I said it's not super important that you like get your cone perfectly conical because you're just going to be messing with it anyway. All right, so here we are. Now time for me to grab my razor blade. And what I'm going to do is scar the inside of this up pretty good. Every which way. Make sure I'm still filming. I am. Good. The tip is going to be a little fun, but I'll figure it out. Good scarring on it. Cut it up. For maximum surface area, I'm going to want to get this really wet. You can see it's already lost its shape, but we'll just rebuild that quickly. And then get this really wet. My water's on the other side of the gold pan, because it's going to need it for just a second here. Oh, I squeezed that way too much. Same to this side. Try and support it as best I can, but it's going to fall apart. It's just how it works when it's not more dry. Again, just to stress, normally I would leave this dry a little longer so it has more stiffness to it and doesn't do what it just did. But whatever, that'll do for now. Get this really wet. And here comes the most stressful part, in my opinion, joining these two pieces. So I'm going to try and get first these two together like this. I'm going to rub them together like so as best I can to sort of make that seal. And then from here, wet the surface down and grab a wooden sculpting knife, which I do have somewhere here. I'm just going to sort of blend this across each other. As such. Really try and make it one piece. Do the same to the other side. This side's already pretty wet, so I might not even have to do anything more. Just good and blended. All right. And now, wet this, and a little bit of this. Connect these two pieces as best I can while maintaining as much of a round thing as I can. One thing that I found I can do, if I can find my tool in a reasonable amount of time, is take this tool here, hold it right about here, maybe here, and that should give me some assurance that there's a hole where these connect, but it is vital I get this wet so I don't stick. And now I go around and touch these corners here, try and jiggle them in place, add generous water. Probably could have done with more cuts, to be honest, but that's life. Really jiggle. Oh, I caught that with my finger. That's not good. Whatever. All right, now I'm just gonna squeeze this in. I do have this mold that I made that can help. You can stuff this in there and get a good shape. Wet it pretty good so it's slippery. You can stick this in, use it to really get the shape good on the inside and the outside. So I can put it here and grab some clay, put it into a ball like this, or a little tube, I guess. Dunk it completely in the water on top, shove it into that gap, and then I guess right-hand it for now. Smooth that in as such. Just to thoroughly connect these two pieces of clay into one. I'm going to use some of that slip that came off to really get this seal good. You don't need one of these mandrels, this wooden thing, but they help. Now I can just roll it a little bit, get the shape more even and secure. I'm going to be doing more of this later on its own, but for now, it's a pretty good bet to do this. I'm going to take, that would stick too much. My leg is numb. Where's that metal knife I had? Oh well, it doesn't matter. I'll just use this. Oops. Careful where your knife is going. Take this, wet it a little bit so I don't stick. Beat this end up so it's all flat. Should be good. See if I can get my mandrel out. A little bit. It worked enough. That's not half bad. Cool. And now, for good measure, I'm going to take my flashlight or phone or something. Sure. Look inside there. Make sure I'm pretty deep. Good. And that'll do. Perfect. Now, this one we've already kind of worked on. Do they still match up in size? More or less. This could stand to be a little bigger. I'm going to pinch it just a little bit. Good and round. And then I'm going to roll this a little better. Just a little bit. It's going to change quickly, but here's how that long metal knife I just had would work really well, but I don't know what I did with it. Oh, there it is. Sorry for that clanging. Yeah, I'm going to cut up this same as the other one. Scar it up pretty good. Maximize the surface area. As best I can. And this I'm just going to dip in the water for now. This one be a little bit bigger. And this nub can be a little more nubby, not gonna lie. I think that'll do. Grab it, grab my knife, scar it up pretty good. Maximize the surface area. I'm also going to dip this in the water. Touch. And rub just a little bit. Be careful not to collapse them into each other, because that would not be great. I'm just going to take my finger and rub it in like this. Good and wet. Just light, quick pressure. Like I'm putting down some pressure, but I'm moving really quickly so I don't collapse it. That was hair I just saw. Get out of there. Or roll it a little bit. Get it a little more even in shape. See, now that air pressure's in there, it can hold it a little better. And I can just take this wooden knife, smooth over some of these pieces a little better. Not perfect. But it works. And I am going to be putting a seam binder over it most likely, because I don't like to rely on such a thin layer of clay to secure these pieces together. It doesn't always work out well in firing if you just rely on this. Just gotta make sure I go like this a couple times to preserve that conical shape. Alright, so this piece of clay I have left of all the parts I broke out, dip a little bit just to keep it moist. It'll dry out in the air. Dip this piece too. I'm gonna roll this into a long, thin snake. Be careful and slow at the bottom section when you start getting the snake to build, because you can break it easily. Something like this. Move it in your hands, get it really thin. Good clay should be plastic enough that you can do this. Get it good and thin and long. That should be good. And now I'm going to drizzle it with water lightly. Oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put this over the seam. For extra support. Almost, but that's why we got some extra. And also that'll fill out anyway. Now I dip my knife and blend this in to the ocarina body. Just for some extra support on that seam. Dip the knife again. Got to keep this almost slip. There we go. As I said, now that this is a sealed container, there's air pressure inside, which prevents it from wanting to shut on itself. So it has some sort of, it has a bit more stability to it. So I can kind of handle it. Just going to keep dipping and rubbing this line in. So this seam kind of goes away. Best to not have too much of a seam if you can help it. It just aesthetically looks better. There's a bit of a seam still. There always will be, but that's okay. I mean, I say there always will be. That's a lie. There won't always be a seam, but you can. There's more steps you can take to get rid of that. And now, again, just this back and forth rolling to really keep that conical shape alive. And remember, it's not back and forth like that. It's this shape. Pretty tip-centric. Don't crush the tip, though. You want there to be an air pocket in there. And as much of a time crunch as I am on, this has to dry a decent amount before I can start messing with it. So in the meanwhile, I can mess around with making the mouthpiece. This is so wet that I'm going to need to keep moving it to make sure it doesn't crush in on itself as it dries. So every once in a while, I'm just going to move in and rotate it a bit. And yeah, so this leftover ball of clay we can make into the mouthpiece. And that's pretty simple. My finger's a little wet. I am just going to sort of pinch the body out a little bit like this. It's okay for this to be kind of big. Take this knife, scrape these cracks out. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, that'll do. Big crack on the front. All right. So I'm just going to kind of pinch out a general mouth piece like this. And then this bottom part I'm going to flange out by just pinching around the base. As so. So this big, nice, large flange. A surface area that I'm going to promptly cut off. So let's see, this ocarina is going to be a right-handed one because I'm just used to playing that. So this should be pointing backwards as so. Got a hair in there. Good and backwards facing, and it's probably going to go about here. It's a little big right now, but remember, even though clay is one of the few exceptions where it's actually pretty easy to put material back on, it's still easier to take material off than it is to put it on. Seal up that little crack. You can do that more easily when it's drier. So yeah, it'll be on about here. Currently it's a little bigger than I would like. The easy fix to that is to set it down, grab, where would one be? In my toolbox. Sure, this will do, it doesn't really matter. And cut a majority of this lip away, because you really don't need this much of one. That's better. Pull it out again. Let's see, really push it off to one side. I like to do that. And this stick, I put a little point on the end. Doesn't really matter, but it's just a popsicle stick. I'm going to shove in right now, all the way through, like so. Just to sort of create the mouthpiece. Popsicle sticks are pretty good size for a general ocarina. You can use something smaller to get a higher breath pressure, but I'd be careful because those really small ones on a higher ocarina, like a C ocarina, you can end up missing the high notes. It's hard to hit the high notes when you use what was I saying? It's when you use a really narrow mouthpiece, it's easy to miss hitting the high notes because you just won't have the airflow to hit those high notes. That's an issue I had when I did my last ocarina build that I didn't publish. Or maybe I'll publish it, I don't know. Is I just didn't. I used to not make the airways big enough, so I'd always start losing my my sound when I started to get to the thumb holes. And I realized, hey, for ocarinas of this size, I really ought to make the sound hole bigger. And it worked greatly. So this is really big. But that's okay because I can cut it down later. I feel like it should be a little more narrow. That's for sure, though. It is a little thick. Not very long. This is angled backwards, so this would be looking at it from the front. Twist it this way. I'm going to flatten it this way, actually. Pinch it at the base so it sort of flares up to a point. That's an aesthetic on some of these early ocarinas. So, and then it's got a flare towards the back, like this, for ease of playing. Before I can add this, this needs to stiffen. If it's not stiffened, I can't add it without seriously screwing it up. But yeah, I'll put it on about here. So I'm going to mess with this a little more, maybe. Dip the bottom so it doesn't get too dry. And yeah, this has got to harden for a bit, so I'll get back to y'all when it's hardened. A little more. Not leather hard, but harder than it was. Alright, see you then. Okay, so It's been one night, and this has hardened up a decent bit, but it's still pretty soft. I've just been rolling it every now and again to keep it as round as possible. But you can see I can pick it up without it falling apart. It's got all these little crevices and things on the side. That's okay. You can deal with those in a bit. But right now, I'm just gonna find roughly the best looking spot in the front. You can see that crack. I can just sort of get rid of a little bit by going over it. I'm gonna go over this whole thing to really seal up these cracks in a bit here, but for now, you can see it's still soft enough that I can do this. It's maybe leather hard, maybe a little too hard than I'd want it, but life gets in the way. The seam is still prominent, but we'll fix that later. And then there's this that happened somehow. I don't really know, but that's a problem for later. Right now, we have our mouthpiece area. We pull the stick out, push it back in, as so. I'm going to have to wet this bottom area, so I'm just going to dip it in the water. Soak it a little bit, because this needs to be pretty wet. And hopefully it won't crack on me. Again, I waited a little longer than I normally would. This looks like it'd probably be the best for the front side for now. I'm probably going to put this about here. I want to set it with a slight back angle, so it's like pointed towards the back, not directly center. I want to push the stick in. So right about there, the stick is going to go in, preferably up against like that. Yeah, so it's in, and it should be angled as best as it can this way. And now this needs to conform around as such. That crack is okay. I'll deal with it in a bit. So now that that's in and this is here, you can set this down, seal this crack up a little bit. I'll use some tools to get this in better. Working around a camera is a little odd, but just seal that crack up a little bit. And now I gotta just go in, knocking around my other ocarinas, dig through my box of tools for either the razor blade or a pointy knife. One of them will do. Sponge, whatever. I always see every single tool I don't need before I see the one I do need. There we go. And I'm just gonna go in and scratch up the surface here thoroughly. Because this is not quite as wet as it was before, it is imperative that I scratch it pretty thoroughly. I mean, scratching it up is always important to make sure you get a very good seal. Like this. And then this would go on like so. So let's just see, put this through. Go in here. You don't want it too far towards the back or too far towards the front. About here is good. In front of this joint, a good ways is a pretty good bet. And now I'm just going to mark around the edge here. Scratch it into the body of this ocarina. as a general guideline, as you can see, and then I'll just scratch this up too. It doesn't seem like much, like it'd be tempting to skip the scratching step, but it is extremely important because you are significantly increasing the surface area when you do this. And you're also increasing greatly the amount of slip and, I guess, cross feeding could be the word that's going on. Like how much clay from one piece is mixing with the other, which is what you want. So now I'm going to take my fingers, dip it, wet this thoroughly. Really get it properly wet. And then again, I'm going to dip this with water thoroughly. Don't push that all the way through. I want these to be properly wet so they'll bind together well. And try not to knock down the ridges when you do this. The cuts you just cut. All right, like so. And then I'm just gonna walk it around like this. These little circles with pressure. Good, good, good. All right, now I can take, doesn't really matter which tool I use, but this is my preferred. Wet it, and then smooth this into the clay body. Trying to keep all of this pushed this way. Doesn't really super matter that cut, like, it will all be filled. Wet my knife, it'll get on there. It's a little harder than I usually do this at, because, as I said, my schedule isn't really allowing me to work on it on optimal times, but that's okay, I'll make it work. So, yeah, I'm just gonna have to keep re-wetting my knife because of how dry it is. Switch hands to make sure I can work around the camera. And I'm just gonna try and do my best to blend these together. It's okay for it to look a little wonky at this stage because you're gonna go back and carve it out once it's properly leather hard. This is not its final shape, essentially. Unless you so choose it to be, which I guess you can do if you wanted. I'm certainly not going to stop you. But you do want this joint to be strong. So work that slip in that you've created. Carve it every which way you need. Like this. Back to a hand I'm more comfortable with. Oops. Keep hitting it with my fingernail every now and again and taking a chunk off. Not ideal. There we go. Yep, just smooth it into the body.
some of this slip I want to drop off on the ocarina and just spread in to clean up any potential cracks or abnormalities or yuckies. You get a lot of slip doing this, and then that's where you can just use it like this to smear in and help solidify everything. I'm not burnishing it right now exactly, like I'm not polishing it. I'm just smoothing out all the roughnesses. Filling in any cracks that may have formed. And you can see that ocarina is taking shape. This can still move freely inside the body and outside the body of the ocarina. And once I've done a lot of that, I'll just dip my finger in the water and do some finger work as well. It can be a little bit more fine, even if it's not as powerful a blending tool. Like, you don't get quite the same strength in the seam if you use your finger. So it's good to use a tool at first, whenever possible. And then your finger can just smooth everything out afterward. Just a little bit of water goes a long way. And this is going to be rehydrating the clay a little bit. So, sorry, that's my Snapchat. Don't need to check your own. Yeah, I'm just going to keep working at this a little bit. Give some good pressure, make some slip, push it well. All right, that's pretty good. Gonna let that sit for a second for that slip to really work in, and come back to you in a second. All right, so here comes the hardest part, in my opinion. A lot of people would say that's making the tuning holes. I disagree. I think making the sound hole is the hardest part. So right now we need to judge roughly where the body of this ocarina is underneath the mouthpiece, if that makes sense. So this curve continues on, and I'm willing to bet it's probably about here that the wall of the ocarina is. You'll see in a second. So now I gotta take this stick that looks about right, and I'm just going to go in and probe with a pointer. Goal now is to find the stick, which I did. I'm just going to probe to the side until I'd miss the stick. Like there, and the other side. Probe until I just barely missed the stick. So like that. Alright, let me grab a flashlight. Maybe make this easier to see. Gonna be a little hard to talk and do this, but the goal here was to see if I'm cutting into the wall of the clay, which I think I was. Oh. Or if I actually entered the body of the ocarina. Let's see, this is a pretty difficult process with all this. That's okay, we can work with whatever it is. So this is going to go back in. And I'm just going to cut at a pretty steep angle. 45 degrees maybe. I can't hold this flashlight right now, it's pretty difficult. So excuse me. I'm just going to get close up. I go in like this and then just cut to the best of my ability a kind of round channel. It doesn't need to be perfect. This first one doesn't need to be perfect. I definitely need a little more light. Let's see if I can set this up in a way that I can get myself some light. I could hold it in my mouth, which is what I usually do, but then I can't talk. And that's not good. So this might fumble around a little bit. Let's see. I have an idea. I can do this. I make it a little harder to see for me. But hey, y'all can see maybe, and that helps. So, come in straight, cut in like this at a good angle, and try and cut a nice area for the sound to flow. Keeping in mind, I need to clean this out and then cut this a little bigger. Not too big for now. Better to leave it too small for now. So I can open up and then see inside properly. You can see that there's a big wall of clay inside beneath the fipple. That isn't ideal and that needs to go. So let's see here. Let's adjust the lighting so I can get my camera. I can see as properly as I can. All of this clay needs to go. This is where I take several different tools. Usually pretty curved ones. I have this one which might work, but I have one that's even more curved right here. I'm just gonna go in, push that down, and kind of scoop this area out. Doesn't matter if I kind of mess up the fipple area right now because it's not complete, you know. Gonna carve out that clay body inside of there. Usually whenever I get done with that, I'm gonna take my stick, push it back in, make sure all is fine. Smooth up this back edge here, compress the clay in. If I have to, I'll take a dab of water on my finger just to sort of reshape the outside a little bit. That should do. And then I'll come in with this pointer and just cut all of this out as much as I can. It doesn't super matter if it falls into the ocarina right now. Not ideal if it does, but it doesn't really matter. We can get it out later. The goal is to just keep it unobstructed to the inside. So this is a clean hole. I'm just going to go in and cut straight in. Try and dig out some of this clay. Just a flat wall here. Like this. I'm trying not to see any yuckies like these. I want to get those out if I can. I'm going to go in backhand, scoop all of that out, and then pull it out like that. Really scoop it clear for unobstructed airway. Same thing on the bottom of this fipple. Let's go underneath the fipple gently. It's pretty weak. It's not the thickest clay. And just scoop out any excess clay on it on the underside of the fipple. That's why it's important not to do this step when it's too wet. Otherwise you can mess up the fipple doing this by pushing it too far. It's okay if it looks ugly right now. That's not a problem. There we go. Just lightly carve the underside of the fipple out. And then inside should be fairly clear. Might make a sound now, but it's far from ideal right now. So what we're going to do is stick the popsicle stick in and just compress this back edge like this. And then stick this back in as so. Now we're just going to clean it up on the outside by taking a knife, scooping some of this excess clay out. You don't need to be exact. A lot of it can be smoothed back in. And then a finger. Pushing some of this clay in like this against the popsicle stick. This can all be pushed in as well to make it more neat and tidy. Which isn't just for aesthetics. Neat and tidy makes the airflow better. So now I'm pushing this clay up against the popsicle stick, but that's not its final resting place. We're going to need to push it a little bit lower if we want it to make a really good sound, I have found. This can just be pushed and compacted like that. I'm not going to scoop material away here, just smooth it out with the back of this tool. And it's kind of wet right now, so it's going to need to dry a bit more before I want to push it in. That's looking pretty good. Unfortunately, I saw a hair. But that should do. So my test is that if I can blow really hard and it doesn't lose sound, it's probably going to work on the higher notes. Right now it's not, and that's because it's not splitting the air right. It's going to be really hard to see, but effectively we need to look through the airway and make sure that this fipple is going to split the air completely in half as cleanly and smoothly as possible. So right now I'm just going to stick this stick back in, push this clay down again against the stick, and actually cut this even deeper because it's not quite, it's a little not steep enough for my liking. I'm not taking more off the tip. I'm just cleaning up the airway outside. So this very edge is still exactly the same width because I'm putting it on the popsicle stick. And then I'm just rotating in at a high angle and carving out this. It's okay to be a little bit sloppy because you're just going to clean that up like this. And then maybe with your finger a little bit, just wet the finger a bit so it all slides right. And make it look neat. This tool is what I wanted. All right, and I'm just going to let this dry a little bit before I start messing with it anymore. See you then, after it's dried for a bit. Not too long, just a bit. All right, there it is, more or less how it needs to be. Dried up a pretty good amount. I'll just pull this stick out. Do one last kind of compression of this area. Stick back in, make sure it's not clogged any, which it was a bit. That's the big thing, is getting these little fragments out. You can see them better in person than you can on my GoPro. It looks pretty clean now. One last time, gently, always gently push the stick in. You don't want to force it to carve a new path. If you must, wet it a little bit so it slides more easily. Okay, good. That should be pretty clear. Now the next part, oh, sorry, is a look down. You can see how it's just clear like that. I want to move this fipple down to directly intersect in the middle, as straight as possible, of this airway. It's going to be hard to do on camera, but generally what I'll do is I'll take a tool like this one, clean this back off so nothing will stick, and then look through and just gently push and roll, not directly on the fipple, but up here to push it down light. Oh, yeah, so not directly on the fipple. If I have to, I will, but generally up here to just slowly push it down until it splits halfway. Because right now it'll make sound, but on the higher notes it might not. See, if I blow hard, it cuts out. I'm not going to be able to do this on camera, but I'll show you where it is. So just right now, it's right here. You can see big, open, and wide. All right. You can see in here, I kind of cleaned up the fipple a bit, so it's more in line and split down the center. Looks pretty good. And that's about as good as it's going to be. I can blow and blow harder. And it still plays, which indicates it's going to still make a sound on me when I get to the higher registers. Currently it's blowing in D, perfect D, so I can make it either a perfect D 10 hole, or I can make it an F sharp 12 hole. For the sake of this video, I'm probably just going to make a 10 hole. But anyway, so I'm going to take, now that it's dried up pretty good, I'm going to take this knife tool here and start scraping the outside clean of all its defects. So it has a nice smooth surface, and this will also thin the walls down a little bit, which should make it resonate a little better, so it's a little louder and also way less. Just be careful not to remove too much material, but unless you are really good with working clay, in which case you wouldn't have a problem anyway, these walls are usually thicker than you'd think. You'd be surprised when you cut the holes just how deep these walls can go. But I've noticed the key is having pretty thin walls if you want a really good resonating. You don't want paper thin walls because then it's just too fragile. And there's nothing to resonate against, I imagine, but too thick and the sound can be pretty muffled. So this is really where you get the nice look of the ocarina from, is just from scraping a lot of these finger marks away and all of that. All those dings and dents and everything get smoothed out well, like so. And at the end of all this, I'm going to bust out a sponge and I'm going to polish it with that sponge. Could go more, but I'm hoping I can glaze this. I don't plan on glazing it with a handmade glaze. I just don't have the time in my life right now to pursue making my own clear glaze. Maybe someday in the future I might, but for now I just don't have the time to pursue making a clear glaze by myself. So when I get to that point, I'll probably use my own, or a bought one, a store-bought one. We'll see. I'm still not entirely sure how I'm going to fire this. Maybe in a fire. I guess we'll see. Smooth this out because that's where my thumb hole's gonna, my pinky hole's gonna be. So I want it to be good and smooth. It's okay to do a decent amount of work here to make it look how you want. Like, this is your chance. You're not going to be doing this when it's ceramic. And you don't want to do this much when you have the holes in, because scraping with the holes in, you could easily remove a little bit too much material around the hole and change the key of the hole, which wouldn't be great. So you can remove a decent amount of material here. Anyway, there we go. Getting that nice conical shape that I want. Removing all this excess that I don't need. Some's getting in there. It's okay. It'll come out. Let's see. A lot of material on this here. But basically I'm just going to scrape around, cut it down to shape. I'm going to save you the tedium of that because it takes a while, and also I only have like 30 minutes left of memory on this SD card. But I'll get back to you when I'm done. Okay, so just in here, scraping off the last little bits. It's a jump cut for y'all, so you can really see the difference that I've made, I'm sure. But I'm not being afraid to remove a decent amount of material here. This is where you get the final aesthetics of your instrument. The other bit was just really setting up the rough form of the outside, and also the whatever that's called, the cavity inside. Oh, almost dropped it. Don't drop it. That's really not good for it. So yeah, just gonna polish this like this, a little bit around the mouthpiece. This little bit down here I'm not super happy with. So I'm just gonna kind of go in and lightly polish that up a little bit more. You can hear when it starts to get thin. All right, that should be good. All right, now I'm just going to take a sponge and polish off all this dust, but you can really see the work I did to make it look more aesthetically pleasing. Might want to take off a little bit more here. But yeah. All right, so now I have this sponge. I can just go in, and I'm going to do this dry. Doesn't really matter. You can technically do it wet, but I've never found the need. And I'm just going to polish it up like this. Get rid of all those rough marks by just polishing it up. Works pretty good, all things considered. Gives it a nice nice burnished finish like this that I personally enjoy. Gets it ready for its final shape. You can see it's already becoming shiny. Kind of hard to work around the camera here. Likewise, I'm not going to film this whole burnishing process. It's kind of repetitive and just you watching me do this. So, yeah, polish it up with a sponge and I'll show you when it's done. Alright, there's it sponge polished. I'm not going to make it extremely polished because there's no real need to do that. I kind of like having a little bit of handmade charm to it. But that's the basic thing. Kind of would have liked it this jutted this way a little more, but it's fine if it's 90 degrees. It's still playable. A little big, a little long, but oh well. I could technically change that if I really wanted. Just cut that down. Yeah, you can see it's polished up now and ready to be tuned, more or less. Yep. And you can also see, maybe, I polished the inside as well a little bit. So it really splits well in half. That should make a good sound. This part's a little funky, but who cares? It's handmade. But yeah, see you then.
Alrighty, so it's dried out a little bit, maybe a little too much, but hey, that works. And hopefully I'm in shot here. The solid D, which is one note up from the C that my other one is. So right there, which is fitting because the other ocarina I made is one note down, so I have a small range. Kind of nice. I could make this a 12 hole. I'm still debating on that. To make the 12 hole, essentially you mark out where you want your fingers to be, and then you make the sub, at least I make the sub holes first, and that would bring this up to an F sharp, I believe, which would be right there. Yeah, so that'd be an F sharp. And then I could do that instead. I haven't fully decided yet. That's my Snapchat, not yours. I would have space for the sub holes, but I might just stick with a 10 hole because may as well have sort of that range. I think I'll do that. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to open up an app like this one, Pitch Tuner. And then you have your app, and then you play. You can see it should be a D. And try and get it. Depending on the shrinkage rate of your clay, you might want to make it a little flat, but generally you want it to be right around the green as much as you can. I don't know the shrinkage rate of this clay at all because it's natively mined by me. Um, I could do tests on that, but I'm not that thorough. I'm just gonna get it in tune with itself, and it'll be in tune with the other ones, and it'll dry the same amount theoretically. So yeah, let's get into the actual tuning.
All right, so you can see here, D. Now what I'm going to do is place my hands exactly where I want to play and then mark those positions by scratching into them just a little bit. So let's see. Maybe a bit hard. I gotta get it to my mouth as comfortably as I can. It seems like it would work. Okay, so I got my hand right in the position it needs to be. And now right above my finger, I'm gonna go in, scratch a little hole. Doesn't need to go all the way in, just a mark. This one. This one. And then this one. And ideally you kind of keep it away from the airway. But you can see these scratches that I've made to indicate where my fingers should go. Like that, and they have a nice curve, which is generally good. If I want to make a sub hole, you can do it in two different ways. Well, many different ways if you really want, but the two popular ways are the ones I prefer. The one I prefer where you have a sub hole here off the middle finger and then another sub hole off the middle finger. But there's also the style where you have a sub hole off the right hand middle finger and pointer finger. That's not my cup of tea, but whatever works. For this one, I don't think I'm going to be making sub holes just because the other ones I made don't have them. I have made sub holes before. They're not hard. It's, well, actually, why not make a sub hole? I'm going to have to think about this. Give me a second. In the end, for simplicity, I'm not going to be doing sub holes. So anyway, now I have these holes here. Go about here. I can worry about the left hand later. That seems to do pretty good though. And the first step is to drill a very small hole into the pinky area. You're going to be moving up the scale, tuning each note as well as you can from the bottom up. Basically, what's happening now is effectively every other hole is perfectly covered. So you just want to make sure that each hole individually is as in tune as you can make it. And every other note comes from there, starting with a very small size of bit. I have some drill bits for later just in case, but I usually avoid drill bits because it's very non-precise in their size. Like, it's hard to remove just a little bit of material with a drill bit. But also these ones, these little bits that come in this kit that you almost no doubt have or have seen, aren't exactly sharp. Um, so it's slow work. Generally, I do this a little bit lighter or wetter. I don't like how tall this pinky is turning out right now. I've had that happen in the past and it's worried me. So I'm actually going to take this and scoop it out a little bit. The pinky's ending up way too high on the body. So I'm going to move that down. Might look a little funky, but that's another reason why you don't want to do this so dry. You can see how flaky the clay is right now. It's flaky enough I almost want to wet it. I waited too long, but I just had other things to do. So let's crack this down a little bit. I'm not going to film the entirety of me cutting this hole. It just takes a while. There, now I have a small hole. Let's see what it is. E, which is exactly what it should be. Well, D sharp. Let's see. So it needs to be a little bigger. Which is cool. So I'm just going to take my spoon bit like here. I hope the quality of this is okay. And lightly open it up. So you can see now it's higher. Using my camera so you can see. Could be just a little bit bigger. Like that. That should be good. Needs to go a little bit more. If you notice that your ocarina is not in the key you want, like it's slightly too low, you can add a small little hole here, like your bass note. As you can see, this one wasn't quite in C, it was slightly off, so I added a small tuning hole there to bring it up to C. This one was right on D as it is, so it doesn't need that. Trying to get the breath pressure the same. Just because it says the right note up on the top does not mean it's in tune. If you don't get it, if you don't get each note as in tune as possible with the right breath pressure as you can, it'll affect your sharps and flats when you start making those. That's basically there. Just a tiny bit more. Perfect. That's one hole. So that's E. The next one is going to be F sharp, which is where I could have made it if I use sub holes, but nah. After every single time I do this, I put this on, I reiterate where my fingers are going to be. Because almost every time I make the hole, where I want my fingers to be kind of changes. So let's see here. Now I'm just going to take this finger off. Sorry you can't see. It's in the same general spot, just a little higher on the Ocarina body. And that happens just because the place you want the hole to be isn't always exactly where the hole ends up being. Alright. I can polish that out later. But you can see the new place my fingers want to be is up there. Probably shouldn't have scratched in the other ones, but that's fine. Because if I just drop down, they kind of land there. It usually kind of goes out the pinky hole. Anyway, now the goal is to cut into this one, which I will do quick. Alright, hole is in. Probably too small now. Yep, too small. So I could go with a drill bit, but this seems too big. So my usual play from there is to grab this spoon and open it up. Usually, as I said, I'd work this clay a little bit wetter so it doesn't crack as easily, but for the sake of video, this is fine. Perfect. Watch right here. It just sounds right too. I have a whole bunch of dust and junk in there, but that'll all come out later. You can sometimes get it through the mouth hole, but in my experience, it usually comes out better in the deeper notes. There we go. That's a little bit of it. You can hear it. But that comes out later in the deeper notes. So yeah, just going to put your fingers on again, find the next good position, which is right there, right as I kind of predicted. So right here. Yep, and then I'll cut that hole. Alright, so this should be a G. Let's see, it's hard to hold this camera up now that I have more holes. A little flat. Now that I don't know where any of my tools went. That's a common thing for me. Oh, there it is. It's a little flat. Just open it up a little bit. As you can see, this is again why I said I usually work these not so dry. It cracked there and here, like it's chipping off, and I'll have to fix that later aesthetically. If you work it a little bit more leather hard, you don't get those cracks. It doesn't chip off like that, but whatever, I'll fix that later. Let's see where I'm at now. pretty much on point. Just gotta make sure. Maybe a little flat. Just gonna drill it out a little tiny bit. The goal is to try and play like I was naturally playing. Yeah, so generally when I'm playing, just naturally, it hits G, which is good. Right on the point. Next hole. So let's see. Right here, right where my finger thing is anyway. Perfect. All right. Okay, next hole is made. Should be an A, I think. And it is definitely not. So this one's going to need to be quite a bit bigger. Let's just make sure I'm doing the right thing. So it's like a low G sharp right now. Meaning it's got to come higher. Probably about this much higher. Not gonna lie. It's always risky when I choose a drill bit because if I go too much, it's really hard to correct for. But sometimes I just use intuition. Look at that. A. If anything, it's slightly flat. I like using drill bits though because they are generally really clean holes. Gotta get some of this junk out of there if I can. These usually come out in the later holes that get a bit bigger. The left-hand holes tend to be a lot bigger. Let's see. Yay. All right, now for this hand. I'm gonna do the same thing except for I'm gonna not do the pinky first. I'm gonna be doing my ring finger first. So let's get on that. Okay, for this next hole, these holes tend to be pretty big, so I'm not afraid to use a drill bit. My smallest drill bit that I have here, this will probably be fine to hit C sharp. The last one was a B. But I'm not really afraid of this because, as I said, these ones tend to be pretty big. Drill bits do make really clean holes though. Yeah, see, it's a C. Oh, you can't see it's a C because my thing is over here. See. So yeah, it's a C. That means it's still got to go bigger, which I will do with this drill bit. So I need one that's slightly bigger than this one. By a small amount. Most of these are annoyingly imperial, so I don't actually know how to judge it. But this one should be it. Okay, so that wasn't it. Seems like it still has a slightly hefty way to go. Drill a bigger hole. Oh, I'm gonna get some of these chunks out if I can. Well, I can. As I said, as these holes get bigger in the higher ranges, it becomes increasingly easy to get a lot of these chunks out. Perfect. And then the last one is back to D, because obviously D scale. Sick. Let's make this D happen. Yeah, so it's basically in tune. Yeah, it's in tune. So now our next note is going to be this thumb hole. Going to be in a weird place, but that should be a E. An E up here. Try and keep it away from the mouthpiece. You generally want to keep all these holes away from the general sound hole area. Oops. You generally want to keep all these holes as far away from the sound hole as you can, so it has something to build pressure. Otherwise, you're going to get very weak notes, but it seems like my thumb hole is going to have to be way the heck up here. So up here and by the nib. Not ideal, but it'll have to do. So right about here. Seem about right? Yeah, it seems about right. And this should be an E from that D. These are the holes that often kill ocarinas. And it's generally because they need a lot of air to escape. You can kind of see how quickly you can work on this when you get more experienced with it, though. Like, just grab a drill bit that you kind of know from memory will work, or from experience should do the trick enough, and then finish it up with any fine work that you want to do with this. As such, you can see I'm getting a lot of that junk out now. There's the last big one. No jiggles now. Maybe a little bigger than that last bit I used. But it looks like this one. 11:30 seconds. Sure, let's try it. Yeah. That's E. And the next one should be F sharp. Which my thumb will be about here. So I can take my smallest bit over my thumb and make a hole. I actually don't know if this is my smallest bit or if this is. This is. I believe I just got that wrong, but oh well, it doesn't matter. These tend to be big. Anyway. And this is not using the European style, where the next note would be your pinky. I'm using your the Asian style, where you go this, and then pinky. Traditionally, this sort of style of ocarina, your next note would be here, but I just don't like that. The pinky hole's too big and it's awkward to play. Yeah, so this is gonna need to go up a decent bit, like I imagined. I'll drill that out. It needs to be even higher still by about an entire note. This seems like about that. Still needs to go higher by a sharp. Probably be this bit, huh? Well, I'll mess with this around and get to that. Yeah, right here seems good. Pretty sure this is a smaller drill bit. And this is going to take some boring out. Probably a little bigger, to be honest. Not that big, this big. You can see it coming together looks-wise. Still would like to make these a little higher pitch. Just slightly higher. Same with this one. And of course, this pinky hole does need to be a little higher. Let's see. The reason why I'm doing so much flare is because I want it to be in pitch with my natural idea of breath progression. If I just play them each individually, my breath pressure isn't going to be the same as it naturally would. So I'm doing some flare, some playing around, so my breath pressure lands naturally where it wants to be to hit that note, so I can tune it to that pressure. Let's see. So final scale. Yeah. Or yeah. It's a little hard because it's I'm getting used to it, but like it does play. And next step is just me filing down some of these to make them smoother, where these holes sort of formed, and then polishing it up a little bit more, and then I'm going to try and fire it. Good luck. All right, so here's the ocarina. See some chips every here and there. I don't really care about those. I can clean them up. I probably should. Might still, but I figure y'all should see it in its full glory. Um, or or the same song using more flats to see if those are in key. Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be for the flat. Pretty in tune. I'm not really playing to be concert ready right now, just screwing around, making sure everything's in tune. And it is. You can just see a general trend, though, that the holes start really small and they get bigger and bigger, with some exceptions, as you move up the notes. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't go with sub holes, because the sub hole here would be right there and here, and it'd be higher pitched than I would like. This is a good scale, because now I have this one, which goes in what is that? D. This one's in C, so one lower. And then not only that, I have the other one that I made, which is, I believe, a B,
So one lower. So I have going up the notes, and if I keep this trend up, I can have one in every key, minus minor keys and all that. So then and then pretty neat. Which should mean this one's lowest note is the same as this one's. This one's lowest note should be the same as the one key up. Yeah, like this. So this one's lowest note should be the same as pinky, right pinky off on this one. Same. And this one's pinky off should be the same as this one's lowest note. Yeah. That's kind of neat. I'm forming myself my little troupe of ocarinas. All right. Well, time to get on to the firing process. I hope that goes well. I've not yet fired an ocarina since I was a kid, and it was this one, which I showed before. Kind of garbage. So we'll see.